When people think about yoga, I don't think they think about what you just described. So how would you how would you compare your form of yoga to other yogas?
Well, I would compare my form of yoga with other yogas in that it is, again, that difference between being and becoming. Other yogas are presented with all the problems. And so they will say that you need to become more flexible, you need to reduce the stress in your life, or you need to use relaxation for health and well-being. Functionally, all those things are true. There is the benefit of practicing yoga, that over time, if you practice stretching, you'll become that much more flexible. There is benefits to these archetypical shapes that do facilitate things like blood flow, respiration, and do definitely facilitate an ease in terms of being able to relax and greet the challenges of life. Any fitness regime will provide those same kind of benefits. So anything that's done that is healthfully beneficial is just that, it's healthfully beneficial. Yet the mindfulness about how it's done can be dramatically different. If one is doing the same old, doing whatever they're doing to achieve something, or there's some kind of end gaining associated with it, whether they're running a business or whether they're doing a yoga practice to be able to get their legs behind their head, that is some kind of a struggle. That is some kind of activity that they engage in that is in conflict. And the conflict is very simple. There's a dramatic difference between where they are now and where they want to get to, whether it's becoming enlightened or whether it is making some kind of a pretzel shape in yoga poses. So a lot of yoga is presented as that physicality and that physical approach which you will gradually get better at by doing it that much more, and then there's all kinds of justifications for how they would do what they do, and you just need to practice just that little bit more or that many more times to be able to become that much more flexible, and eventually the presentation is usually along the lines of understanding a deeper spiritual practice eventually, and eventually getting the holy grail of nirvana, moksha, or enlightenment, or samadhi, or whatever way it's called. The difference between that and the approach of being yoga is simply that in being yoga, we live with what is never not the case, which means we live with the way that things already are. And in living with the way that things already are, we see that already there's an intelligence that's inherent in being. We see it in the order of things. We see it in the experiment that you just did when you were touching the plant. There's an intelligence there that's actually perceiving something, and it gives you an accurate presentation of the sensation. Where we tend to go wrong, the wrong turning, is the intellectualization of creating the idea of a finger that's experiencing this. When the reality is there's no finger, there's only simply what's experienced, and what is experienced is highly accurate, and there's an intelligence behind this experience. And that's something you can trust, because you can see that if you do something like cut your finger, there's an intelligence that heals itself, that's innate in this organism. And that's happening now. So the truth is happening now. It's not something that you become. It is something that is the beingness of things as they are presently. So it is something that is never not the case, and it is the way that things are now. The practice of yoga is simply resonating with that which is already happening. See it as it is, and there's a natural invitation then to be attuned with what is. And that attunement is the practice of yoga, and being is what's already happening. So all you're simply doing is attuning with what's already happening.
So the question was to compare being yoga to other kinds of yoga. And as you're talking, I'm thinking what you're saying applies to any spiritual practice that a person encounters where we live, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. There's just so many offerings, whether it's Buddhism or art of living, nutritional alternatives, activism, anything, massage, bodywork, Reiki, Eckhart Tolle, Deepak Chopra. There are just so many alternatives. Can you just address those? Because people might be thinking not just in terms of being yoga versus yoga, but being yoga versus every spiritual practice that's available to them.
Well, every spiritual practice has some merit. There's a reason why people do these things. And at the same time, the dramatic difference between being yoga and anything else, whether it's another form of yoga or another spiritual practice or another spiritual approach, is just that, is in the approach. Being yoga, under the auspices of people like Jean Klein, I've learned to describe it as the direct approach. And the direct approach is just simply the difference between directly being with things as they are and the becoming approach, or the gradual approach, where you gradually get more enlightened, more spiritual, more flexible, or whatever it is. And none of this practice of being yoga denies functionality, which is what a lot of these other practices are based on. If you do stretch on a regular basis, functionally, you will become more flexible. So there is that reality of becoming more flexible as a result of stretching on a regular basis. And in the same way, there is, in every spiritual tradition, saints and sages. So these saints and sages, they clearly understood something, and they came to some way of being that it was based on their particular approach. So it's not that those approaches do not have some flowering of goodness. Yet there is, in this practice that I represent, being yoga, a simple application of a direct approach that avoids all of that process of becoming, and it acknowledges the functionality of things. So just like when you're touching the plant, there is a sensation, there are things that show up, and when I'm saying things like, I have a way of being which is this welcoming and there's an ease to it, it's not that there are no problems for me. Problems still arise, yet nothing is experienced as being problematic. So it's just to be greeted as it is. And if I have to plan a trip, that is something that's going to happen in the future. Yet there's not any great struggle to it. It's just the functional practicality of how to plan a trip or how to set up my next set of yoga classes or things of that nature.